I'm a motorcycle rider and reviewer. We are here in Brisbane, Australia, and today we are testing the newest electric Lime scooter. Now, you're probably familiar with these things, and there's a good chance they operate where you live too. Lime have electric scooters, bikes and mopeds in more than 200 cities and 30 countries around the world, and are actually run by an American company called Neutron Holdings Inc. out of San Francisco. They have been operating since 2017, and today we are on their 4th generation model to test. By the way, I'm in no way sponsored or affiliated with Lime. This is my own review. My name's Kwackajack, and if you don't know me, I ride and review motorcycles. Everything from tiny 10 horsepower ones up to 200 horsepower supercharged monsters. But today, we are ditching the massive engines to instead try one of the most numerous and sometimes controversial two-wheel vehicles on our streets. I have a few questions to answer. First, is this new 4th gen scooter itself any good? How is the actual Lime platform? What are the rules surrounding them and how's the overall experience? And finally, price. In a city where all of our public transport's only 50 cents, is it even worth it to use one of these things? We'll go for a tour of the city along the way, and the first person that can comment all the places I go to, I'll pin. Lime first appeared in Brisbane back in 2018 with a total of 900 scooters available for hire. The way they operate is that they are located in strategic locations around the city with a hop-on, hop-off hire system. They were actually removed from our market in 2021, and the contracts were awarded to rivals Beam and Neuron. And this is how it was up until late 2024, where it was discovered that the purple option Beam was doing a sneaky and actually had more scooters on the road than were licensed for and were taking the profits for themselves. It wasn't just here in Brisbane that this was happening, but nevertheless, their license was revoked and handed back to the OGs, the original green. So Lime is back, and back with a vengeance. They now have 1,700 e-scooters available for hire and 400 e-bikes. With a distinctive green and white livery, removable battery pack mounted low in front of your feet, and light and speaker on the front, it's a design that most are pretty familiar with. In my opinion, they do look better than the orange Neurons that are still available on our streets, but the design isn't quite as good as the purple option was, the Beam. Lime doesn't say who exactly makes their products, but it is believed that they are manufactured by Xiaomi and Ninebot, with the batteries being from BYD. The new Gen 4 scooters are equipped with a 250 watt electric motor located within the rear wheel hub, driven by a 12,400 mAh battery and are rated for a max speed of 20 kilometers an hour. They are sitting on the road with a weight of 27.7 kilograms and seem to have a max range of around 40 kilometers. These new Gen models do come with telescopic fork suspension at the front and drum brakes at both the front and rear ends, controlled via the handlebars. There is a larger 12-inch tire at the front and a 10-inch at the rear, and you do have a basic dash with battery indicator, NFC connectivity, 3-color strip below the display, and QR code to allow you to connect via the Lime app. While this one doesn't have it, most do come with a helmet attached as well. So how are they? It is fun, but the power feels restricted. I remember riding one when they first came out back in 2018 and reaching speeds upwards of the mid-30s. These latest gen models struggle with even slight inclines. There also isn't a speedo, so you don't know exactly how fast you're going. And with the new laws that we'll discuss in a moment, this means it can be hard to know if you're traveling at a proper speed. The front end does have fairly good dampening from bumps, thanks to the new forks, but with there being no suspension at all at the back, it is still a very firm, bumpy ride. The standing platform is wide enough for most people, and I found the most comfortable position for me to be on was 1 foot forward and 1 behind. They do turn well in tight spaces and are fairly agile, and this really adds to the fun factor of the scooters and makes up for the lack of overall speed. I found myself wanting more on longer straights with nobody around, but at the end of the day, with speed, they are handicapped with the local laws here. The brakes I found hit or miss. There were some bikes I used that didn't have both working, and only the front or rear being usable. They do lock and skid quite easily too when pushed harder, which younger crowds will enjoy. It's also a bit of a luck of the draw as to what quality of scooter you'll get. Some feel faster than others, and the overall quality of most of the ones I've seen has been average at best. Oh god, this one's even worse. Even though these things have only been added back onto the streets recently, they already seem pretty well used. I think overall they do feel a bit underpowered. And even though they are, it doesn't feel like they're electronically limited, but they're limited by how much power they can actually produce. I think a torquier motor to get you to that top speed and help with hills would definitely improve the experience. In saying that, with how light and nimble they can be a lot of fun to use on twistier paths. Added with the brakes, proved to be a formula that can be pretty entertaining.
parkour!
But now on to the next, and I think more important question, the platform and experience. To actually use the Lime scooter, you first have to download their app. I'm using it here on Apple iOS. After setting it up, it'll show you the geo-fenced boundaries that you can travel within, any no parking, slow or no riding zones, and where the scooters and bikes are located. I do like that if you click on one, it'll show you how much battery that it has available and give you an estimated range. So if you have a longer trip in mind, you can check if the one that you're heading towards has got enough juice. I will say though that while it gives you the range, it doesn't show you the overall state of it. And there have been times where I've arrived and the thing has been absolutely beat up. Looking at the map, we can see that the allowed riding zone is quite large, going all the way from Hamilton to UQ, and going down to the Mount Gravatt Griffith Uni. That theoretically means that you could ride from the city all the way to Griffith and back if you wanted to. The increased amount of scooters also means that there's usually one pretty close too, and I didn't have to look very hard to find one, whether it be in the city or the burbs. Some of the no-go, slow, or designated parking areas can be a bit oddly placed or just frustrating. I understand that it can be annoying to have scooters whizzing past, but in places like South Bank and the Kangaroo Point Bridge, where there is literally a bike path, it feels a bit over restrictive to only be allowed to go 11 kilometers an hour. Why is this a slow zone? Also, and I think a huge missed opportunity, is that they don't allow us to go all the way to Eat Street in Hamilton. They make you stop at the old cruise terminal, which is over a kilometer's walk away. I don't know why they just wouldn't let you go all the way there. This does actually bring up an important issue though, and it's the laws surrounding personal mobility and e-scooters. There has been a huge push to toughen up the laws around scooters recently here in Brisbane, and I've personally witnessed police enforcing them, even here at the end of this bridge, standing behind poles with radar guns and pulling over scooter riders for either travelling too fast or without helmets. So what are the laws? Well, the speed limits here in Brisbane are 12 kilometres an hour on footpaths, 25 kilometres an hour on bike paths, and 10 kilometres in shared zones. They can also be ridden on roads where the speed limit is 50 kilometres or less. Helmets are mandatory and fines can be issued on the spot. For speeding, it can be up to $500 and up to $1,000 for riding recklessly or breaking road rules. Again, I've personally witnessed this with them standing at the end of bridges with their handheld cameras and fining people as they come past. This, in my opinion, has a huge impact on the overall experience of using one of these scooters. There's no denying that they are fun to use with friends, family, or solo. Unlocking one and zooming along the footpaths does put a big smile on your face. But with the new law enforcement and rules, that fun can quickly turn to fear as you're pulled over and issued an on-the-spot fine for speeding. This would not be as big of an issue if we had more dedicated bike paths here in Brisbane and the scooters could be separate. Lately there are more being built, like here. But in majority of densely populated areas where these things would be used, like South Bank, you will either not know where they are or find people not using them and sharing the paths with pedestrians. I absolutely agree that there is an element of danger with people whizzing past you on scooters. There have been lots of injuries caused and even several deaths. One in 2019 where a man passed away after crashing, and another recently in 2024 where a teenage girl was involved in a crash with a four-wheel drive and motorbike. They are dangerous, and I'm sure it's part of the reason for the crackdown by police. Which brings us to how much are they to use and is it actually Which brings us to how much are they to use and is it worth using one? You have a couple of options when it comes to using a Lime scooter. The first is to rock up, unlock one and pay as you go. This will be the most common and the most expensive way that most people will use the Lime scooters. It's $1 to unlock and then 60 cents per minute. That means if you hired one and used it for an hour, it would cost you $37. Realistically though, most people's journeys will be shorter than this, and I found that most of mine were anywhere between $10 to $25. And that's from going from one side of the city to another. The other option is to purchase a Lime Pass, which is basically a pre-purchased bundle, where you can hop on and hop off without the $1 unlock fee and use up to a certain amount of time. This is definitely the most cost-effective way to use the scooters, and what I've done while filming this video, as it allows you to use the time over several days. It claims that you'll save anywhere between 65 to 70%, so if you hired one for 1 hour, it'll be $13 instead of $37, which is a big difference, and for sure, in my opinion, the best way to use them. You could get 2.5 hours of use for less cost than it would be for one if you just rock up and ride. If you're unaware, Brisbane has now got 50-cent fares for all of its public transport for the foreseeable future. That includes buses, trains and ferries. And that's great. For people who are struggling with the cost of living crisis, any little bit helps. The thing is, the actual public transport system here in Brisbane is a bit behind. We don't have trams like Sydney or Melbourne. Bus routes are usually slow, very crowded and somewhat unreliable. And the new light rail, well, it's yet to be seen if those big buses described as trams will have any impact. It's not all bad, of course. The trains are decent and the ferries are always a joy to use. Hands down the best form of transport here. But there does need to be more emphasis on public transport to help the growing population here get around. I think the value overall with a Lime Pass is okay if you're in an area with poor bus or train access, especially during peak times. But if you're trying to be frugal and get around for as cheap as possible, public transport is still the way to go. I would argue that the fun factor of the scooter definitely gives it some points, but I think it's more of a novelty than anything. With the newer, tougher laws and enforcement, it makes it even harder to justify spending more hiring a scooter rather than just hopping on a bus for 50 cents. But I want to hear your thoughts. Do you use these Lime scooters? Do you think they're worth it? Or are they just a scourge of the streets? I'd really appreciate if you could give this video a like and hit subscribe if you haven't already too. But thanks for watching. Until next time, see ya. Aligning. Wow, echo here. Oh my god, it's fucking windy. Use, and is it actually... I'm using it here on iOS. They can quickly turn to terror as you pulled over and... Okay. Are you alright? No worries. With the newer, tougher laws and enforcement, I should have picked a better spot away from the birds.